Let me hit record there. And then finally, some examples of SQL databases: Postgres, which we're going to talk about today. There's MySQL. There's SQLite, which is a very lightweight relational database that comes out of the box with Ruby on Rails. We'll talk about that next week. There's also paid type of databases like Oracle. Alan mentioned Microsoft Access. So there's a lot of relational databases out there. An example of NoSQL databases, we've already gone through Mongo. There's also Cassandra, Couch Database, Firebase, which Mike used, Redis, like I just mentioned. So a lot of different varieties out there. What is a relational database? So it looks very much like an Excel spreadsheet. This is a screenshot of Microsoft SQL Server. And you can look, if you look on the right kind of right-hand side window there, it looks very much like an Excel spreadsheet. So you have columns, last name, full name, cell phone, etc. And then each row would be a new entry, or a new, looks like a new person in this example, a new object. So this would be considered a database table consisting of rows and columns, rows and columns. So with the relational databases, again, just trying to get comfortable with the different vernacular here. Data is stored in tables. The tables are organized by columns and rows like a spreadsheet. Tables are named according to what they model. So let's say that we're building an app that authors had many books, for example. In Mongo, we would probably create an author document and then embed each book as a document onto that author. Well, in a relational setup, we'd probably have a table for authors and then a table for all the books. And then we're going to talk about a method to connect the two so that when we look for a given author, we can find all the books that that author has read. And that's considered a relation. How is this author related to the books in this other table? In the case of the authors table, each row would represent one author, and each column is called an attribute or a field, like ID, title, birth year, first name, last name, email, etc. Most relational databases communicate versus using SQL. And SQL stands for Structured Query Language. It's a database language specifically for relational databases. And contrast this to non-relational databases like Mongo, which essentially just use JavaScript, which is super handy. And again, the benefit of using Mongo in the mean stack is that you only need to know one language, JavaScript. Now that we're diving into Postgres and a relational database using SQL, we'll see next week when we get into Ruby on Rails, we're going to need to know how to write SQL queries. We're going to need to know how to write Ruby code, because Ruby on Rails is built in Ruby. So unlike the mean stack, we're going to have to know, enough to be dangerous. We're going to have to know bits and pieces of several languages, which is kind of fun and exciting, actually. We're going to get to learn some new stuff. So just a couple more things, and then we're going to install Postgres. So relational databases, how do we relate data between these different tables? And here's a screenshot. This is what we really want to focus on today. Really want to get comfortable with the mechanism for relating data in two different tables. So let's say that we wanted to relate the rows in the books table to the given row for an author in the authors table, like this diagram suggests. What we can do is we can use a key to do this. And that's going to be a field that is unique for each row in a table. So each author that we create and each book that we create, each row in any table is going to have an ID field. And you can see that in this diagram. So the author has an ID field, which is a unique identifier for each author. And then the book has a unique identifier for each book. So they both have what's considered a primary key. The key is often represented using an ID, which is a unique identifier for each entry in the table, and we refer to that as the primary key. Now, in order to relate data, for example, to relate a book to an author, we would need to add a foreign key field of author ID onto the books table. the author ID would be the primary key of the author that the book belongs to. So again, the way we manage this in Mongo is we would just embed a book document into our author document. But using a relational data store, an author has many books. So the way that we relate that data is, let's just put the ID of the author onto the row of the book, and that's considered a foreign key. And that's a really important concept that we want to get comfortable with today and tomorrow. So books and authors each have a primary ID field, a primary key, but when we put one key onto another table, that's considered the foreign key. And so the author ID here on the books table would be the foreign key. So we would probably write a query if J.K. Rowling had an ID of 1, and we wanted to find all of the Harry Potter books or whatever that she had written, we would do some sort of query, find me all the books where the author ID equals 1, because that would be J.K. Rowling's ID. And we're going to get some practice with that later this morning. Okay, I think we're good. Let's move forward to installing Postgres, and then we'll actually get in there and play around with some CRUD. So we're going to walk through this document, but I think what I'm going to do, I'm going to ask someone, since I already have this installed, what I want to do, I want to ask for a volunteer to share their screen, and we're going to walk through this together, installing this Postgres application. So what I want you guys to do is we're going to download this. There's several ways to install Postgres. Kind of the path of least resistance for today is we're going to go to postgresapp.com and literally download the app and drag it into our applications folder as we would any other application. And then we'll do a little bit of configuration after the fact. So would someone be willing to volunteer to be our guinea pig? All right, Kieran's going to step up. Cool. So Kieran, when you're ready, if you want to share your screen, and we'll walk through this together. Make sure we're all solid on this stuff. And we may encounter, you know, 1 or 2 errors is pretty common, but you know, we're going to get through it. Political dog meme. Oh man, I cannot talk today. Much strong, very politics. That's awesome. Yeah, Kieran, so if you want to come on mic and we can talk through this. So go ahead and go to postgresapp.com in the browser. Cool, so if everyone can see that. And the documentation is pretty well written. So we're just gonna walk down, we're just gonna follow the instructions as they are listed here. So if you go to step 1 right there, installing Postgres app, go ahead and click download, and then move the downloaded app into your applications folder. So if you guys want to go ahead and do that. Yeah, you can also brew install, but we're going to do it this way so we're all consistent. Yeah, you can use brew, you can use, you know, you can download it directly. Usually downloading directly is a little easier, a little less complex, but like Alejandro says, you can absolutely use brew. You can use brew to pretty much install just about anything. Cool. So yeah, if you want to open that up. Yeah, go ahead and drag it in. All right, do we see it in there?
Ah, here it is.
There you go. Cool. Yeah, so go ahead and double click on Postgres, on the elephant itself. Cool. And the next thing we want to do is hit initialize. Okay, cool. So this is pretty standard. So you're going to have, so each one of the little, you know, stripes there, whatever icon you want to call that, that's just kind of the icon for a database. But you should have a Postgres, which is kind of like just some high level like admin stuff where Postgres stores some information for indexing and such. And then probably a template and then a Kieran work database. So Kieran, is that the username for your machine, for your computer?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, that is accurate. So if you guys open up Postgres and hit initialize, it should go ahead and create kind of a data store with the username that you have for your computer itself. So go ahead and do that. Give me a thumbs up in Slack. So Kieran, let's hold tight just a second. So give me a thumbs up. If you initialize successfully. And the other thing, if you guys will notice on Kieran's machine, look at the top, up in the dock, up in the top kind of right-hand corner. And you see how you have that little elephant icon? So just like when we used Mongo, you wanted to make sure that you had Mongod running. You want to make sure that if you're going to use Postgres, you want to make sure that you see that elephant up in your dock. So you guys will need to click on the elephant to make sure that the Postgres engine is running for us to communicate with the database. Like I said, Alejandra mentioned that you can install using brew cask. So if you guys want to install, you know, if you want to uninstall Postgres and reinstall it using brew cask at some time in the future, feel free, you know, you can go for it for sure. Yeah, we have 6 thumbs ups, and let me know if you're having any issues with anything. And the other thing, while we're still waiting on 2 more folks, or Kieran, if you want to give me a thumbs up there. I think we're solid. Kieran, if you go back to the browser and scroll down just a little bit more in the postgresapp.com, I just want to point your attention, scroll down a little bit more, you should see a section that says graphical clients. So I just want to give you guys a heads up. Like I said, relational databases look very much like an Excel spreadsheet, so I think that they'll just make a little bit more sense to us. But these are 2 kind of GUI interfaces if you want to visually see what your database looks like without going into the actual engine in terminal or something. So I'm not going to download these now, but just to let you know, if you want some sort of visual guide, and maybe that helps you visualize your data a little bit easier, there's pgadmin and Postico. So if you want to download one of those at some point, and what that'll do is if you click on a database that you've initialized, it'll show you, you know, kind of look like a spreadsheet. Sometimes that's easier just to get a sense of what the data looks like. So Audrey, what kind of errors are you having?
Couldn't identify the developer after like something, and it said it wouldn't install. Okay, cool. So hold tight 1 second, Audrey, and we'll help you out. So for everyone else, let's go ahead and do this next step, and then we'll take a few minute break, and then we can help Audrey. But let's go to step 3, Kieran. So if you scroll up a little bit. So we installed the Postgres engine. However, if we want to be able to access Postgres via the terminal and use those commands, we need to install kind of the command line tools. And so that's what step 3 is doing here, postgresapp.com. So let's follow these instructions, Kieran. Go ahead and run that first command, the sudo make directory -p.
And you can copy this if you want, just so there's, if you're more comfortable, but either way is cool. And it's actually both of those lines, I think, because you have the and. So you should be able to do this in one fell swoop. So let's make sure this works okay. And you can run this from any directory and such. And go ahead and hit enter. And then the password, go ahead and enter the password for your machine, for your laptop. Cool, okay. So to test this out, type in PSQL. Okay, go ahead and close down the terminal and reopen it. And let's see if it'll refresh. Yeah, and then type in PSQL again. So PSQL is similar to when we typed in Mongo on the command line prompt. That'll get us into our database. Cool. So yeah, so this is what it looks like. Nice work, Kieran. So when you're in the Postgres command line tools, you'll see a little hash. So an equal and a hash. So that lets you know that you're in the PSQL, the Postgres shell. And yeah, PSQL 9.6.2, very nice. So let's make sure that we get to that point. So if you guys want to go ahead and run that step 3, run that really long command, and then close down the terminal and reopen it for those changes to take effect. And give me a thumbs up if PSQL is working. So we didn't spend a lot of time when we were going through Mongo. We didn't spend a lot of time actually in the Mongo shell. We let Mongoose do a lot of our dirty work. But today and tomorrow, we really want to spend some time running these SQL commands. So like I said, SQL, it's been around, relational databases have been around since the 70s. So there's a really good chance, again, even if you're not like the database administrator or something, there's a really good chance that whatever opportunity that you get after WEI, you're probably going to run into a relational database more frequently than you would a non-relational database. So it's really good practice to have some sort of, just enough to be dangerous with how to write a SQL query, how to write these statements. So we'll be doing that the next 2 days. Cool, if you gave me a thumbs up, go ahead and take a 5-minute break, or actually, let's just come back at noon, come back at 12. And then Audrey, let's make sure that you're good to go. So once you get it working, come on back at noon. And then Audrey, if you want to share your screen, let's see what's going on.